So the idea was to create an event to, number one, understand for someone like David who gets pitched stories day in, day out, what are the things that resonate, or is there something that works well versus something that doesn't? And I think maybe we can start off there. You get pitched like a lot.
Yeah.
What is it that makes you say, yes, that sounds interesting? Is it a tiny message? I imagine you don't have time to read press release, on PR Newswire. So how does it work? What's your...
Oh, it works, well, it works exactly like that. I get bombarded with pictures from companies direct, from PR agencies and others, even just other journalists. I wish there was some kind of secret sauce to say this is what ticks the box, because it's almost a kind of a movable feast that, one day we're talking sustainability, next day we're talking belonging, diversity, and then we're talking about, a metaverse, a whole new kind of concept that's there, that is newsworthy. I think simplicity is always the key to any journalist's heart. You need to be able to, and this comes down to your own understanding of the business, you need to be able to understand what you're doing and why, and articulate that really quickly and easily. Because that is generally the only bit, that's your mission statement, that's your raison d'etre, that is your why. If you can't sum that up really quickly, then you need to think about why you're even sending the news. A good example is the fundraising, which is typically a startup's kind of first press release, first moment where they think, we need to get this out, we need to tell people. I have mixed feelings about the whys and wherefores of that, whether it is necessary, whether it's actually even interesting. But it does seem to be a key part of the startup narrative. I think partly because it's so important in the startup business, raising money, relationship with investors is so important. Obviously, telling people about it is critical. As Maddyness, we report on all UK startup investments that we hear about, that we can discover, and we use various tools for doing that. But there are ones that are more interesting, and that can be down to an investor doing their first foray into a space that they wouldn't normally operate in, or some kind of often very personal link between the partner and the founder. But I suppose what always sticks out is innovation and interest and tying things to now. So if you can find a hook to something that's happening in the world that resonates with today, you've got a better chance of being picked up.
So what I'm going to do is take an example of you now. So we've got a whole bunch of founders here. Now, do you, and open it out on the table, we can switch the camera off and take this off later. Do you have an agenda for 2022 where you say, you know what, January is going to be sustainability, February is going to be this, or do you play it by the movement of, at the moment we're all talking about metaverse.
Yep.
We're talking about NFTs. We're talking about Web3. And we're going to concentrate on that. And maybe there might be some kind of climate event in February, and then suddenly the news is going to be there, and boom,
Yes.
you're first there. Do you have an agenda that's set?
Listen, like any good startup, we have to be very open to agility, being able to change, is part of, I suppose, our DNA is being open, right? The door is always open. So new ideas, new things and change, we have to be ready for and adaptable to. That said, we are definitely going into 2022, and actually it's been underway for about 6 months already this year, doubling down on all things ESG. Which is a tough one because it's so easy to associate all of that with greenwashing, and that's a whole kind of discussion which I think we'll probably get into. But our thought was, this is all stuff that businesses are now talking about in ways that they haven't done so much and so in depth, but also businesses are going to be forced to report on it, right? These are things that will be happening, that all businesses of all sizes will have to be accountable for their ESG. And that's something that we're doing ourselves as a business, but we thought beyond that, well actually, as a position as kind of creator of narratives, teller of stories and reporter of news, why don't we incorporate into our strategy both the internal and external, and effectively tell our story going through the different audit processes, through B Corp, entreprise à mission, all the different things that we're involved in, as a way of documenting it. And in answer to your point, absolutely, it's no better thing than to see something hit the headlines and be able to say, we were talking about that 2 months ago. It's good for SEO. It's also good, it makes you feel good. It's also part of the key thing for narratives for me, which is momentum, right? It's going one thing always leading to another. So our loose sort of editorial agenda for the year is to report on our journey through ESG as a way of effectively promoting all the great companies and bodies and initiatives that are doing that for companies, to say, you might find it daunting, but actually we did it. It took 4 hours of our CFO's time.
Fantastic.
He doesn't hate me too much. But also because, come back to greenwashing, we've seen it's such a deep issue, and it's only going to get deeper, and we're really scratching the surface right now. And it's nice, the surface is offset your carbon, plant some trees, that's great content, that's good for the planet. It's really kind of small in terms of what we will be needing to do and what we can do.
So give us so we'll take that example. How do you go out and build your story? Because that could help us as entrepreneurs think about how can we pitch a story to you? Because obviously, if it's not interesting for your readers, it's not going to be interesting to you. You're not going to relay something your readers don't care about.
Yeah.
So we've got to come, I imagine, when we're pitching you with a story, something that is going to be of interest to your readers.
Absolutely. I think it's such a funny one. I think I probably have a sort of a vision of a founder, which is they are so passionate and consumed in what they're doing that it's almost too much to ask them to say, now I want you to project into the mind of our readers and rethink what you're doing to appeal to our readers. I would always encourage you to play to your strengths, articulate what you know best, right? Whether it's processing images to make them more accessible for your clients, whether it's creating a whole new space that we're all going to exist in the future. Whatever it is, you own that uniquely as a founder. And that's kind of your USP. And if you start kind of second guessing, how do I tweak this to make it appealable to what I perceive your readers to be, then actually I think you're getting into sort of dangerous territory of like losing confidence in your belief in yourself and your product and service to try and kind of bow down to something else. So I think what I'm saying is be unique, and you can only do that by being yourself. Have confidence in it, but yes, also kind of strong advice of, people don't really want to hear that you've been to HSC and you're in this alumni network, and you're 15 years before doing the founder, you were this. And that is a very French thing that I've noticed.
Really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's quite a strong thing that I come up against. it's valuable to you and it's great and it's part of who you are, but newsworthy, I mean, everyone went to school, well, not everyone went to school, but we've all had a path that's led us to where we are. Almost try and flip it to where you're going, right? What if there are key landmarks in what you've done, that's great. I think also, coming back to your point about how to do this, rely on people that have helped you during the way. How are we putting together this content about our journey through ESG? I've got a fantastic journalist who is, in my opinion, the best in this space. And the nature of my job is kind of community building. So it's drawing on those experts. So I can't sit here and claim to be the person who can explain why we should be planting kelp rather than trees, but I know a man who can, and I'd rather incorporate him into the story. The more people you can involve, the better, frankly. And that, I don't think I'm giving away secrets, but yeah, I don't do it all myself. There's a team of experts, and a lot of that comes from the startup world. So alongside pitching what you deem to be pitchable, it's always nice to hear a sort of, almost the caveat at the end of the email. If this is not what you're thinking, or if we can help in any other way, now that you understand what we're doing, or if that can fit in with something else you're doing, we'd love to make ourselves available as a commentator, as an expert, or whatever it might be. So yeah, journalists don't like to be told what to do. I do get a lot of press releases that just from literally the wording of not even the introduction, but the kind of the strict embargo to publish by this date, that's a real turn off. I mean, any good journalist will always respect embargoes. It's one of those things, cela va sans dire. It goes without saying. But also, you're one of so many other things happening. So yeah, that's almost humility is always, I suppose it's, humility, human, the words are very close, right? If you can be human, humble, but also fiercely passionate and authoritative in what you're doing.
So take the last 2 weeks, can you give us example of something that had all the ingredients that you've just spoken about, the humility, the passion, the humanity, or human aspect, and another that did as well, but maybe wasn't as sexy for you enough. And what was the difference between those two?
Two, I suppose, very polar opposites. So one was about a company recruiting someone who was formerly at Salesforce into a very senior role. That's great. It's not newsworthy. I mean, I'm sure the person is eminently capable and fantastic and will be a real asset in this role. But I find that sort of not really outbound newsworthy. That's great internal news for the company. And I think a point I think would be good to come back to is storytelling outside and storytelling inside. They're both as important. But seeing a press release like that, I just don't have time. I mean, you've literally got to be like former, ambassador to a former kind of spokesperson for the UN, now joining a tiny startup to change the planet in very tangible and practical ways for me to pick up on that. Movements from C-suite to startup, less interesting. The flip side, and this is maybe too revealing and not particularly good because it's tied in with a tangential personal story, which was what pushed the content to being kind of fast-tracked. Notwithstanding the fact that the brand is absolutely fantastic. So there's a brand called Castor, which is a UK sports brand. Yeah. Super new, literally come out of nowhere. Great investment story. Actually, very little investment in the company, but one of the investors is Andy Murray, and is so a brand ambassador. I quite like tennis. I quite like the brand. It's a British brand. I happen to have been introduced for another reason to one of their investors. Super charming guy. We just got on. We've only met by Zoom, but really nice. Very kind of quick bond. Kind of no bullshit. Just straight to what matters to you, what matters to me, what fits. Where does the Venn diagram kind of connect? It connected around this brand. Great story. Young founders. Rapid success. They happen to have just taken on supplying the kit to my football club of choice, and also will soon be sponsoring the England national cricket team, which is another kind of personal sweet spot. In my kind of personal life, I'm associated with a little local cricket club. And I just put it out there, we want to cover you, we want to talk about you, I'm so impressed, and would you be open to talking about supplying kit to my little local cricket club? And I got just as open and interested a response on both questions. And I think it went live today. Really nice profile piece on the company.
So here, there's a bunch of tie-ins that may sound like a coincidence on the surface, but deep down, is there something more than just a bunch of coincidences? The passion with which someone has a story that's strong, that's saying, you know what, it's an English brand, it's a British brand. We are, forget Andy Murray, forget, they're passionate about what they do. Would it have worked without all these little coincidences with someone who's absolutely passionate about what they do? They have one story, they believe in that story, they don't take shortcuts. Would it have worked?
It's a very good question. There's a strong chance that it would have worked, because I do think genuinely there's a editorially interesting story in any growth business. Would it have happened so quickly and pleasantly and had the same kind of rapid response between the different parties involved? Probably not. Okay. So again, timing's really important. Throw into this, I think this all happened during Black Friday.
And you had a special code for your readers.
maybe got a Christmas present.
No, for your readers, I was talking about.
No, we didn't, and that's a really interesting point. One thing to fully avoid, is the promotional side. For me, it's very clear. We are there to document the future of the economy, right? The future of the world that we're living in and moving into. And we do that by talking about startups and companies. And so it's tacit that there is an element of promotion, right? Any and every good founder will think their product and service is the best. Kind of don't need to say that, right? And that's where it's kind of, where is the story? The story is not a voucher code that will get you discount, because that's part of your mass need to acquire users, and that's cool. I'm really happy to help with that, but that's kind of quite deep down my list of interests. Although I do still believe it's as I said, kind of tacit in why you would be wanting to position yourself on Maddyness or any media. But yeah, don't go in saying we've now discounted our price on this service and it's the best service ever. That's not. Yeah. That's marketing. That's
desperate.
Not, yeah,
it sounds desperate as well.
It does. Yeah, it does.
So I'm gonna, if I may ask, can we take one example of a business that, imaginary or real, and we try and build a story that would resonate with you and with your readers? And how would you build that? Because obviously you're going to build it into your readers. Yep. But how could we build it for you? And or how do we pitch it to you? Is more like, because obviously what you've said, if I remember correctly, don't build the story for me. Let me do the story for my readers. You stay with your story. Yeah. Could we take one example? Anybody want imaginary or real? Yeah, shoot.
Shall I just give Hi, so this is Veronique from Storyskimo, and Storyskimo is a podcast creation platform for children. And the story really starts about 2 years ago when my daughter was at that time around 3.5 years old, and she started listening to podcasts and audiobooks, and then I suddenly saw a really steep progression in the way she acquired language and herself becoming very quickly a very good storyteller. And so Storyskimo became a platform that has a mission to be an audio playground for kids to unleash their creativity. She became a podcaster as well. We grew our community too, gathering more parents who wanted their kids to become creator of content and realized that actually there were no platform out there made for children to create their audio content. So this is what we are doing.
You're ticking a lot of boxes for me. I think you know that already. I think starting off with the very personal, how it started, right? Seeing that in your daughter is brilliant. Thinking that's kind of, I don't want to say fluffy. It's lovely, right? It's real. It's human. This commitment to the future. I mean, EdTech is such a dynamic and interesting space. I do genuinely feel kind of grateful to my parents for putting me through the education system that I went through many years ago, but genuinely optimistic for kids going through using the tools and opportunities they have, and not just kids actually, right? The kind of democratization of education through EdTech solutions is fantastic. I like also that you think of the business as a platform. Because that for me, that's just like, okay, so actually you've got a built-in openness to where it can go, what you can add on, if you think of a platform, the train, where's that train going to take you? To an airport, right? Fly anywhere. And it's nice, it's storytelling, right? We're talking about storytelling, and this is storytelling. So yeah, I don't know, maybe we need to get, how old's your daughter now?
She's 6.
So I think she should be your ambassador and spokesperson. I think any content we do, we voice it through her.
I've got a question. When you've got someone pitching to you with a very short email, let's say, or a message on LinkedIn, is it so? What are the next steps after that? Like, if you are interested, what happens?
Is this based on personal experience? Because I didn't respond to it, because I know we did connect on LinkedIn.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very good question. I mean, you need perseverance. There is, for me, and I think any editor, so much happening at any one time. I think you need a bit of patience and you need perseverance, and don't be afraid to chase. It does pay off. And I tell you what, it's better to chase as the founder of the company than having the PR company, if you're engaged with the PR company, chase on your behalf. They will chase, but there's almost a dissolving of kind of importance, and a kind of, again, this sort of the power of speaking as the founder. So, yeah, don't be afraid to chase. Don't be afraid to, continue the story. I mean, this is something I like to think I've left with all the startups that we've talked about. It's never a one shot, right? The nature of a startup is, right, you start and you go up, right? There's a continuity, there's a growth, there's a whole narrative ahead of you that is just as important as the narrative that's got you to where you are. So yeah, it's never a one shot, right? So if you hit, I don't know, 1 million users, that's newsworthy, right? Or at least that's a hook to tell me.
To keep you posted on how we are progressing.
Correct. Yeah.
And things
absolutely.
that might happen, some milestones that we are trying to hit at some point.
Exactly. And if things happen you know, I'm trying to think of how to contextualize it for this. But if something was to happen in the new bill about online child safety, if there was something that was pertinent and relevant to the fact of, you know, content created by children for children in a safe platform space, then that could be really interesting, right? So yeah, and I suppose one eye on your business and one eye on the things that are affecting your business and potentially going to help or hinder.
It seems like it's about creating, so not only our story, but also giving cues on links that tie that into what is currently being discussed.
Yes. Yeah. Comes back to your point of what are the tips to make my life easier?
Yeah. I remember speaking with the guy from Wired magazine, the guy with the big glasses. I forgot what his name is. Do you remember him? Short guy, leather jackets, always. Anyway, so he was saying, you know, he's saying I've got a team of like people who have to constantly come up with content for articles, content for web, content for social. We need stuff, right? So if you can pre-digest it for the team who's writing social, it was something I can talk about it later.
It's a real point, and one of the things you can do to make life easy for us is, you know, I love it when I spend a lot of time sort of looking behind the scenes at a startup, right? So through Company's House to understand where and when the business was founded. And if you can put together a solid media kit or press kit as part of your website, it's relatively easy to do. I mean, Dream Factory, where we are sat today, is a huge, you know, a key tool in helping to get you to the point where you've got that and it's media friendly. That's really valuable, right? All of that is just less time for me searching down. And the result is that the assets that we're then able to use are better. And that, you know, think about, you know, I'm not some kind of puppet master picking and choosing which startups I should talk about today. There's so many other factors that the more you can do to make it quick and easy, the better, right? But by doing that, they're actually tools and kind of you know, good practice for you as a business that will help you outside of your relationship with media.
So taking Veronique's example, we're going to rewind, right? Because here we're in settings that are very uncommon. There's very few journalists you're going to have the opportunity to speak with in this way, this amount of bandwidth time. So what I want to know is, how does she pitch it when she wants to get into Le Monde, into the Times, The Guardian? How does she pitch it? Does she pitch it a quick tweet? Because she's not going to, the way she tells the story, which is great. Is there a little aperitif to appetite, you know, to open your appetite for her to be able to tell the story, which is a very strong story?
Yes.
Here we're going away from story, but more into the approach of what's the first touch point for someone who doesn't know you from Adam or Eve, doesn't have this opportunity. How would Veronique do it if she absolutely didn't know you?
I think you need to understand the media you're talking to. You know, it wouldn't take too long to identify the key journalists writing at Le Monde, Les Echos, Wired, TechCrunch, Maddyness, who are dealing with businesses like yours. And, you know, they're all on Twitter, right? They all exist. They all have opened themselves to contact. Why have they done that? Because, as you say, we need content, right? We're not, as much as we're bombarded with content, that is, we are open to that, right? So tell people, you know, very directly, even personal, you know, one well-targeted, personalized tweet or LinkedIn will be more valuable than cold calling 1,000 people, right? That 100%. That is
for sure.
And if you are if you're able and willing to put the time into the kind of, I mean, this is what we should all do in business: monitor your competition, see who's talking about like edtech, see who's talking about online kids platforms. Identify those key players and tell them what you're doing, right? So
again, coming back to what you were saying, startup. So it's a multi-touch point journey, right?
Yeah.
A bit like Castor brand, didn't happen like that.
Yeah.
So Veronique sends you a tweet saying, you talk about edtech. Are kids protected online? I don't know, something like that. She creates a connection. Step 2, she talks a bit about her business. Step 3, you've kind of opened your appetite to finding more about that. She tells you, is that the process that you would...
That is the process. I mean, kind of more granular. I would then either, if you were to say, I can write a really good piece on this, I'd be like, oh, that's even better. You're prepared to write a piece for me on this. This is brilliant. Or if it fits into something that we're working on, writing on in a kind of bigger picture, get you in touch with a journalist to speak to you directly. And then it can go different ways. It can be a profile piece just of you, or you fitting in with something else that we're writing about, or both. It's funny, I suppose it's a bit like fishing, isn't it? Once you've got that, you put the bait out, right? And that works from both sides. We put bait out to get stories as well. When there's connection, a touch point, it leads to another one, and that, again, what I think is so fundamentally fantastic about the startup ecosystem is the openness of sharing contacts, right? We haven't all got here on our own. Yes, it makes my life difficult, but I love it when people say, oh, it's interesting what you said about that. You need to speak to this guy or this girl because they're doing this. So there is a kind of, and it's something coming back to storytelling. I don't know how it happens, but I always find if you read a book, it somehow leads you to reading another book. And it could be like you love that author and you want to read that, or the person who reviewed that book. You think, well, okay, they're an expert book reviewer, I'm going to lead on. But I think having that openness to the next step, right, and the willingness to share, and it works both ways, right? So if you were to ask, I feel like we're already going down the pathway together to do this, which is great. But I'm more than happy to share other contacts with other people who could be, interested in sharing and talking about what you're doing.
At what point, do you ask for a Zoom call to actually speak with you? Because I'm sure you've got thousands of requests.
Yeah.
How do you...
Listen, I personally, I love it. I feel it's so important. I feel like so much of my job most of my time at Maddyness has been effectively under lockdown. Back in the day, or projecting forward, a lot of these conversations would happen at networking events, right? We would be, oh wow, that's really interesting. You tell me what you're doing, we'll follow up and I'll send you an email. I feel that's really important, and the Zoom call, or we use Google Hangouts, is a real icebreaker. I have so many relationships with PRs that are kind of purely transactional, and it works, right? Like they send me the content, I look, edit, publish. But so many of my relationships with different PRs completely flipped and became much better things when we both said, actually, it'd be really great if we just, give me 15 minutes, just half an hour, just so I know what you're looking for, and you can tell me what you've got. So yeah, I mean, God, you never need to. I mean, one thing, don't pick up the phone and call me. That's
Whoa.
but schedule a Zoom 100%. Even if it is so I'm then able to have 3 bullet points to brief a journalist and say, hey, Abby, I'm introducing you to Veronique because right? These things. And this, me as editor, these are the things I'd want to come across in the piece that we're going to talk about.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Yeah. The idea now is, I think maybe people asking their own questions and.
Yeah, I'll try and be quick.
Sure.
So everyone, as you said, is talking about the metaverse, Web 3.0, NFTs, but it looks like Facebook becoming Meta is actually replicating, or a diversion from the toxicity of Facebook, replicating the model in a 3.0 like 3D environment. Well, so there's a lot of toxicity, there's a lot of abuse online. And then, is that what we want our children to be exposed to? Teenagers are, obviously fragile, and they have to be online because of, you've seen with the pandemic and everything. So that's like online is imposed on us, and we know we're going towards Web 3.0. So shouldn't we have like a more positive metaverse where you actually curate the content? And you actually make sure there's it's a positive experience for everyone. Through moderation and community, you make sure that our kids have like a nice experience, and instead of trying to replicate the imposed social media experience that's still with all the negativity that comes with it, try to have like a ethical sort of human experience of a metaverse where you can be yourself, you can feel safe. So it's sort of what we're trying to build with Jérôme, and I don't know how you feel about, is that the kind of thing that you would be interested in hearing more about?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I fundamentally agree with your point and what you're building, albeit from a position of not really engaging with Facebook, but also in the position of having almost teenage children in my house. So yes, and I think it's, I suppose, I can't imagine it's easy being responsible for these things at Facebook. I think it's got so big, and there's no real governance, right? This is there's a lot to learn from it. And I think your solution is the right answer. Is it newsworthy? 100%. I mean, only last week I was talking to our head of content about some kind of loose commissions for journalists in the new year, and she said, I think we still need to do a kind of like a really authoritative piece on what the hell NFTs are. Right, because it's got to the point now where we're all talking about it, right? We're all banding it around, and it seems to be everything. But do we have a core understanding of what it is and where it's going and what it means? I don't. But then I don't have any NFTs. Maybe. So yes, I mean, effectively, I suppose any platform that is going to be becoming a tool for how we engage with people, whether it's us or our children, future generations, yeah, hugely interesting. And especially set up, I suppose this is where it gets very interesting. What you've got is a dialogue with or against Facebook, right? So in that you're always going to be newsworthy. Yeah, no.
With what Tanguy was saying, I want to know, so for example, how open are you to newsjacking? So for example, I'm saying example, Tanguy is pissed with Facebook, right? And he says, so does he pitch it like that, or does he try to newsjack where he says, you know what, for our metaverse, we're going to recruit 3 journalists to report. They're going to be metaverse journalists in the metaverse, explain or guides, and could you help them? Can you help us? So he tweets you, can you help us? Or can Maddyness can put can you guys put 2 journalists in our metaverse? So avatars of journalists in the metaverse reporting on what's happening in the metaverse, for example.
Yes, love it. I have no idea how we do that, but I can see it. I can see it happening. I mean, we are.
Would you go after Facebook and say they're like the devil incarnate? Or
Listen, we're unbiased, so we have reported on the good and the bad. I mean, it's funny. Our sort of profile clients as a business are large corporates, and so we work with. Oil and gas companies, but we also report on oil and gas companies, right? So there is a fine line to tread, but that's where good quality journalists are critical to the relationship. Strangely, I sit next in my workspace. I sit next to a lady who is responsible for recruitment at Facebook. And so I sort of think, there's stuff we can do. Yes, I knew a little bit more about the doubling down on the metaverse before it was widely announced. Will I get anything else out of her? Absolutely not, right? She'd lose her job. So there's no point in me even doing it. But does that stop me reporting or having journalists report on what's happening? No, it doesn't. Right? We live in, a democracy where increasingly you're encouraged to be open, right? One of the things that I find so fascinating today is stuff that as a kid growing up were absolute taboos, right? You would never hear about talking about, sex toys for less abled people, right?
Sex toys alone.
Sex toys alone, right? Or even handicapped, disabled people. We live in a world now where it's not anything goes, but we are very much more open and analytical and unbiased, I hope, which is great. It does, I suppose, free up the discussion.
But for example, in Tanguy's example, would going to war with Facebook in today's world, not going to war obviously because everything has got to be, is it going to be pretty much everyone in the world is doing it, so he's got to take a different angle, or is it for you get a tweet, do you think I've got something there, or is it so many people have come up with that Facebook is the devil, you need to be something more, I don't know.
Should I more focus on the positives and say this is what we're trying to do and just explain why we're different?
Yeah, I suppose the two go hand in hand, but yes, focus of the positive of what you do. Anything that Facebook is doing is context, right? It's useful context. It's not necessarily, I don't know, I think it's funny, we've gone into the kind of how social media works and Twitter and trolling and what did you used to call it, spats or feuds, and it used to be like a real good way of getting notoriety, like get yourself involved in a Twitter feud and you can grow. I don't know, I think that's as toxic as probably, well, it's almost a toxic byproduct of what Facebook has created, or what the use of the internet has created. But yeah, no, stick to the positives. I don't think anyone would want to find themselves in a courtroom facing a libel case with Facebook. I just don't think it'd be worth it. I wouldn't want my company associated with Facebook,
for sure,
right?
For sure.
Quite frankly, even if it was with the best, most positive intentions of change and improvement, with the right motivations, I wouldn't do it.
I've got to, sorry, go.
So to take Tanguy's example again, when would be a good timing for him to approach you, approach a journalist, and when is not a good timing?
I don't think there is a right time or a wrong time. I mean, again, if there's a hook that you can associate to, we've just raised however many $1 million, pounds or euros, because I suppose, why is that interesting? Why is that timely? Because it would hopefully put you in a position to really take that next step, to really kind of scale and grow, and all the talk and promise and vision can actually happen because you've got that investment. So that is interesting. At the same time, I'm a great believer in, for us, it's way more interesting talking to startups before they become the next big thing, right? So that very early stage for me is just as interesting as...
So planting those seeds, like with the Castor story,
yeah.
Once you come to that discussion, you've had a whole bunch of connections, and those don't happen like that. They've been built, and maybe is there any too early?
No,
connect?
Never too early. Never too early. Frankly, again, it's funny. I remember I used to run my own business, and I was really reluctant to delegate and share and even tell people about what I was doing. And with hindsight, that led to a nice little cottage business that was never going to scale dramatically and ultimately went under. Had I been more open, sharing, willing, talking, right? I think I may not be sat here today as the editor of Maddyness UK. I may be running my own interior design bookshop empire. But the reality, I think, to come to your back, never too early. The more you can tell people, the more people you tell, the better.
Because instinctively, you think, naturally you think that being too early would mean I've got an article in the press, but actually I'm not ready to deliver. So if everyone comes to the platform, then maybe it will still have any bugs, and so.
So I'm going to tell you a story that would have been delivered. Well, so we were meant to have Graham Hussey, founder of Dream Factory, here today, and you must all check Dream Factory out. It is fantastic. But he did a great bit of content where he put out a video talking about this business, talking about what he's doing here. And it was cool, right? I watched it. It was super slick, really funny. He gave a full tour of the space. And then he came back like a week, I don't know what time. Everyone's lost a sense of time during pandemic. It might have been 2 days later. It might have been 2 weeks later. But he put out another video saying, hey, for all you founders out there who watched that video, did you see the 5 mistakes or the 5 things that we put in that normally you wouldn't let through if this is content that you're willing to put out? So continuity errors, typos in the subtitles. And it was like, actually, this is fantastic. So you've got a narrative here. So you've got the original video, and then you've got the follow-up video,
which brings you back to the beginning video.
But then it brings you back to the message, which responds to your question. It's okay to fuck up, right? It's okay to fail. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to get things wrong. Things are not set in stone in the way that they used to be. Things. Yes, you can be called out and cancelled, and your people, if you're a professional sports person, will forensically go through your Twitter and find things that you might have said that are, judged by today's standard, incorrect. But ultimately, don't let a fear of someone finding something slightly wrong on your website stop you from shouting about it, right? And we will talk about this. It's okay to fail. Silicon Valley won't invest unless you've failed at least once. It made so much sense when, again, with Graham's content of actually putting the failure out there with a view to say,
fantastic,
it's okay.
Yeah,
Fuck
fantastic.
it, sorry.
Yeah, fantastic.
I had a question about your advice for the fundraising, because I think press can play a good role in helping entrepreneurs, and I think it has a massive impact in the current economy. So it has a positive impact, like press has a this role to play.
Yeah.
And when it comes to the founder, so we were talking about the right stage. Would you recommend the founder to approach the press? So we say like it's never too early. Like maybe the product is not completely ready yet, but also the investors tend to ask always for more. So it's not exactly the same as the journalist or communication PR strategy. It's more when it comes to fundraising. What would you advise in terms of narrowing down the story to target specifically the investors?
Yeah, I think you need to get the two stories working hand in hand, but also going out to very different audiences. You don't necessarily want, you certainly don't want the readers of the media to be having the same story that your potential investors are having. However, you do want the investors seeing what the media are saying. I'm not sure if it's a question of timing. I'm not sure. I think looking at your case, I think you're ready to roll, right? And I want to be exploring what we can do. This close to Christmas, however, I'm going to push it to next year, if we're really talking about timing, not the last 2 weeks of December.
So I've got a tactical question for you. Back in the days, I'm not going to tell you first. I'm going to ask, how much do yourself, your journalists, get inspired by other news stories and other journalists and what they're writing about? Because you want to be at the forefront of what's happening. Does somebody writing about something about the metaverse, an angle you hadn't seen, an article that's already made, a press release that's already made, does that attract you to want to write about it? And the why I'll tell you in a second.
Yes and no. I suppose we're always interested in unique angles. Actually, very tactically, yes, because any kind of linkage to other things is really good for web traffic. I don't understand. Please don't ask me questions about that because I can't tell you. But I believe it's good to reference other things on the website. But yeah, listen. I suppose what is a media there to do? It's to explore, unearth. If someone's done a great piece on it, then we certainly don't want to duplicate it, but we can build on that and go further,
like a
reference
chef.
it. Exactly, like a chef. Yeah. It would be if every restaurant was serving the same dish, right? We'd probably, depending on what it was, we'd get a bit bored.
Because one of the tactics that I had tested back in the days was taking. So I'm not going to go too deep into the tactics of it, but taking articles that were written about yourselves, sponsoring them. And showing them only to journalists. And whenever a new journalist got inspired by a story, I would take that story, add it in, bring it again to the journalists. So the journalists have the impression that there's constantly news coming about this company.
Yes.
Even though it's sponsored, but as you're going through, you sometimes don't have the time to look at what's sponsored, not sponsored. And again, the same with taking those articles and putting them to an audience of investors, because they've got the impression you're always in the news. So they don't know that you've created an audience with VCs and you've put 25 VCs and you're bombarding them with news. So that would still be something that would work today.
I think so, yeah. Listen, it's funny. I think we all crave like the biggest numbers in the world, whether that's readers, whether that's users, whether that's children creating podcasts, whether it's companies hosting their images and processing through Scaleflex, but But realistically, like less is more, right? I think one of my key thoughts on the narrative is keep it simple. And right, that can be keep it simple in terms of users. If you can be targeted, and if the VC community is the people that really matter to you, then 100%. That's hugely valuable. And again, it's another community that, don't think they all don't speak to each other. They do, right?
Sure.
So speaking to them directly is a good thing. But yeah, no, keep it simple. KISS, KISS, keep it. Two is keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
But I think the better one is keep it simple, shithead.
Okay.
Which was the Andy McNabb take on it.
Cool. I think that kind of puts it all in, closes it up for us.
I hope it was useful.
Because we've overrun by
We've
43
overrun.
minutes. Bravo.